So I think for the first time ever, I'm kinda having a hard time deciding on what to make a video about. It's not that I'm out of new stuff to review, no, quite the contrary. I have plenty to talk about, but I just look at my shelves and I don't quite feel it, you know? I think the week of I Possess No Time Whatsoever kind of blasted the rhythm I had going right out of my head, and I'm gonna have to force my way back into it. By the way, it will still take me some time to get around to all of your comments. I'll try to respond to them slowly throughout the week, but since I had such a buildup of responses last week, I'm sorry it's gonna take a while. Anyways, what's better to get me back in the swing of things than to talk about one of the best figures to come out of Siege? Well, there are probably a lot of better ways to do it, but this is the one I've chosen. Siege Hound. This is kind of both a unique figure for the line and a unique figure for me. I was hyping on Siege extremely hard based on the promo shots before it came out, and when it did come out, it took me probably a week of dedicated searching to find the first figures from it at my local Target. They had 2 Hounds and 1 Flywheels, and I had $23 to my name. I ended up going with the Hound first, and boy was that a fantastic decision. They also had 3 cogs, but you know, that kind of wasn't any real option. Honestly, had I gone with the Flywheels first, I might have found myself a little disappointed with the line initially. Flywheels is good, but it wouldn't have matched my hype. This, however, 100% does. It's not a stretch to call this one of the best figures from the whole War for Cybertron. This guy just has a look. It's a little squat and a little stocky, but that just makes him look beefy. This mold could probably be retooled as a bulkhead and no one would bat an eye. He's relatively accurate to the show model, but obviously been run through the cyber filter and had his weird, awful shoulders fixed. I will say that his feet are kind of ugly though. I mean, it looks like he's just kind of walking on stumps, like elephant legs. And the sculpt of his legs kind of forces them mildly apart, so he has to be in a slight A stance. The paint job on this figure is also really well handled. This was before Hasbro started doing really dumb shit like making half of the alt mode out of clear plastic and painting that all a different color. So without all the wasted paint, they were able to just go to town on this guy. I swear there isn't a square inch of this figure that fails to have at least some paint. It's not like they coated the whole thing, they just used a very clever placement scheme to bring life to every corner of this thing. And this is really where the Siege battle damage started, and what probably drove me to liking it. There is just no denying that this is probably one of the best examples of the damage. There were some real duds, but here he's just got a pretty solid weathering effect going on. I wish this was the level of quality that had been kept in all of the Siege figures, but sadly most of them fell short. I have to commend this figure on the almost complete lack of kibble. Even Sideswipe, a much less complex design, had that flabby waist, but this thing barely even has a backpack. It's so clean. I do need to point out this thing does have some durability issues though. I've seen more than one of these clearly stuffed back in its box on a store shelf with the head blatantly snapped off. I couldn't tell if that was someone doing the old switcheroo, or if somebody returned it for breaking and then the store was somehow dumb enough to not notice the thing was obviously broken and just slapped it back on a shelf. But that's not the only issue. The second time I ever went to transform this, I wasn't yet used to the process, and I tried lifting the bumper without hinging the arms back first. That caused the glue on the right side to fail, and now this whole thing flexes concerningly. Another slip up like that and this bumper will come off. Hell, I could even make a smaller mistake and have that happen now. It's probably fixable, but this is definitely a flaw with the figure. And the head is just perfect. When I first saw those painted eyes, I felt vindication in every ounce of hatred I've ever professed for light piping. It's just so perfectly him. I don't know what I could possibly change to do it better. If you went by the box, you'd probably expect him to look like some horrible fusion of Springer and Cybertron Hotshot. Why is this so wrong? How did the artist both not know what Hound looked like and also not look at the toy? That bizarreness aside, the paint is crisp like nobody's business. And the same can be said for his accessories. Hound wrote a check with his guns that no other figure in the last 3 years ever bothered to even try to cash. For a figure that only came with 3 accessories, you'd think they couldn't be such a barn burner, but man, these things rule. For starters, they are painted so well, it takes what could have been an acceptable set of guns and gear and made them really shine. Kind of literally because it's mostly silver paint. He comes with his shoulder cannon, which is great and almost works as a pistol. You can also use this handle on the back and make a bad ad hoc lightsaber. Then he comes with a solid rifle, which does have a bit of a problem. You see, the peg that the blast effects tab onto is painted, but for some reason the blast effects happily bond with the paint. So if you leave one on for any duration of time, it will actually strip the material from the gun. Outside that though, and this is pretty sweet looking, definitely better than most of the guns from Siege, but even better than that, he comes with a drum magazine which actually pegs onto the side of the gun, just sending this thing straight to the next level. No joke, I was so inspired by this weapon when I first got this, I immediately made some 3D mock-ups of guns in a similar style, but I gave up when I realized I don't have a 3D printer to develop and test them. I'm stunned no third-party company has made modular guns for the Siege line. Seriously, this is the coolest gun in all of the War for Cybertron just because of this one feature, and I'm stunned they never did anything like it again. The nearest thing was Sideswipe and Mirage's shoulder cannons. But those are pale imitations of this. And then you can combine the 3 together and make nothing. I'm seriously confused as to how Hasbro thought this was any kind of upgrade. If I want this to be anything at all, I actually flip this around and make it kind of an explosive launcher. This bit doesn't exactly work well as some kind of rocket or anything, so in my mind, this whole back section is designed to give this a hard smack and send it towards the enemy. I just kind of imagine this thing goes thook and sends a very big bomb not very far, kind of like the Fat Man in Fallout. posability on this guy was very good for the time, but by now it's pretty much just standard. Head is pretty stiff and restricted. I can see how someone would snap this off. Shoulders pull 90 with the regular cheat, a small but pleasant amount of backwards butterfly, barely over 90 elbows. I only mentioned this time because when I saw it, I was very stoked to see a wrist rotation on a deluxe. Even Voyagers didn't really get these at the time. Hips are for the most part uninhibited despite their trouble going straight. Knees only pull a 90, but you can kind of cheat them for more. Foot has pivot and toe up, but the toe only works in conjunction with the pivot, and it's not very long, so it's pretty not useful. And for some reason, it doesn't quite impress me like the wrist rotation, which is funny since this tends to be the far more important type of joint. So yeah, by modern standards, this is pretty average on the posing front, though at the time this was awesome. It really felt like a leap forward. Transformation on this is great, and it should be. It's based on the Titan's Return Cup, a figure that has been rightfully very influential. It's not identical to that thing, but the legs operate the same, and the concept of how the whole thing works is too. So it's clearly cribbing from the TR Cup's book, and that's a good thing. I've said it before, and I'll say it again, the Titan's Return Cup's transformation was a stroke of pure genius. Fun, intuitive, and effective at completely altering the character's makeup into a very solid vehicle mode, doing much more with the legs than normal. And the result is this fantastic little off-road military vehicle. I love how all the accessories store so cleanly and naturally on it. It really does feel like a military truck that's gotten loaded up with supplies to go on a mission. A lot of people like to plug the cannon into the underside here to form a tailpipe, but it's insecure, I personally don't like the way it looks, and most importantly, it's actually insanely satisfying to peg the cannon into these side panels. There's just something about how they almost snap in, and the way they sit so flush that makes it a highlight of doing this guy's transformation. So why would I ever do the tailpipe thing? I've heard a lot of people over the last couple years complain that this thing's alt mode is too much a normal Earth Jeep, and to those people I say, are you insane? This doesn't look anything like a normal Earth vehicle. It looks maybe like a militarized moon rover, but this isn't a normal Earth truck in any way. This is possibly the most cyber-stylized thing in all of Siege. It's more space-like than Prime, Ultra Magnus, Flywheels, Sideswipe, Prowl, Reflector, Mirage, and the only things it's just out-and-out less cyber than is the weaponizers. And well, Shockwave has always been an alien spaceship slash gun, so that doesn't quite count. So this thing, I think, completely captures that cyberpunk aesthetic of Siege they were going for that I particularly loved so much, and it looks so badass. I love this mode. Too bad I can't really leave it like this for fear of all these nooks and crannies now pointing upwards, filling with dust and being literally impossible to clean. Like I said at the start, this is easily one of the best figures to come out of Siege and the entire WFC, which was a line of stunners, so that's really saying something. I love this figure, and I think if you get it, you will be quite pleased as well, so I'm happy to put my stamp of recommended on it. It's funny how every time I have nothing but nice things to say about a figure, the video ends up shorter than normal. If there's nothing to recommend to change, I guess it's just easy for me to go, it could, me happy, instead of explaining what they could have done differently, though I guess that's kind of obvious as to why. Anyways, that's not half of what I have to say, but it's enough of what I have to say. And I know you know what everyone else tells you to do at the end of these videos. So, if you liked what you saw here, please do that. And if you'd like to take it a step further, then please share this video with any friend you think may be interested. I hope you all enjoyed listening to me waste your time.